biggest issue with that is because it's decentralized. You have these other computers that are making the calculations and the transactions. That's where the term decentralized finance, or you might have heard the word DeFi, that's where it comes from. And so DeFi systems, what it's doing is it's taking everything out of the current banking system. It's taking it out of the current government system, and it's having all these computers do the calculations without the intervention of a biased third party. Let's use, for example, where this is how Bitcoin really came into existence. Let's use PayPal for an example. Let's say that I want to send you digital money through the internet, and I'm going to use the tool of PayPal. So we're going to transfer $100 from me over to you. And I go to PayPal and I say, make this transfer. They take the money from my account and they move it over to your account. And PayPal is the allegedly unbiased third party that facilitated that transaction. Well, what Bitcoin sought to do is it sought to be able to move money from me to you, from two independent parties, with a validation of confirmation, but that validation is an unbiased third party. And so that's where the three computers come in. The three computers come in to validate that the transaction has been made, but there's no opportunity for human intervention. And you've heard already situations where PayPal has intervened with people, or other companies, politically agree with it or not. But when the whole Antifa stuff was happening and there was trucker strikes up in Canada, I think, I may be mixing social movements here, but remember when the truckers were going on strike up in Canada and people were trying to Venmo them cash? Well, Venmo got in the middle of it and said, no, we're not going to process this. Well, that's a biased third party. What crypto does is crypto allows the opportunity for you to pass me money, somebody else to pass you money, and for it to go through unbiased third parties moving on these digital rails in the blockchain. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's decentralized finance.
Okay. What do you offer your clients, and how does what you offer benefit them?
Well, it depends on the type of client, but if we look at my trading business, I teach people how to analyze the market, how to trade the market. And the way it benefits them is it gives them control. It gives them information, knowledge, so that they can go in, make an informed trading decision. They can learn when to buy a trade, when to sell a trade. And they're not at the, they're not at the mercy of the so-called professional fund manager who, frankly, cannot usually beat the market. The statistics for professionals are horrible. They never tell you those statistics, but the actual studies show over a 20-year period of time, roughly 94 to 96% of professional fund managers cannot match or beat the S&P. Well, I teach people how to do that. So how does that benefit them? It gives them control. Instead of trusting these third parties that they don't really know, and these third parties that are the so-called professionals who are not performing their job, my customers, they're able to do that work on their own.
Now, how hard is it to maintain financial freedom?
That's a great question. We'll probably need to put it in a little bit of context because the ease with which it is to maintain your financial freedom is probably going to be consistent with the difficulty it took to acquire it. If you got your financial freedom very easily, if you inherited it, if you won it in the lottery, it's going to be pretty difficult to maintain. And the reason is because it's not always about the reward. Everybody makes it about the reward. I got the money, but the reward is just the fruit, so to speak, of the tree that you've planted. And if you didn't plant that tree to harvest that fruit, you don't appreciate the fruit. And you don't really understand what it took to get there. More importantly, you don't know how to repeat the process. So somebody who's gone out, and sticking with this metaphor here, somebody who's gone out and they've toiled the land, or they tilled the land, they planted the seeds, they grew the trees, and they reaped the harvest. If you lose your wealth, it's okay because you know how to rebuild it. Somebody who didn't do that, if they lose their wealth, they're screwed. and it's very, very hard to rebuild it. It's often said the first million is the hardest to make, and I would agree with that. I mean, it took me years to make my first million, and it took me about a year to make the second million. So that's just the nature of money. It's because it's not about the reward. It's not about the harvest. It's about the journey. It's about the process of learning to do that. So people who didn't have to fight through it, they can't appreciate it. And those are the people who lose it very easily. Now, here's the crazy thing. When you talk about keeping your financial freedom, the thing that takes it away is not what you think. Most people think that they lose their financial freedom because they made bad investments. That's usually not it. It's usually mental. It's self-sabotage along the way. There's a reason that the majority of lottery winners end up broke. It's because they didn't have to work for it. They didn't have to fight.
Why don't schools educate teenagers on how to work smart and not hard?
There's many of us that would love to see that change. I guess part of it is just because the school system has a certain system that they want to. Well, I don't even want to say that they want to. The school teachers themselves don't know. They weren't taught. Their parents weren't taught. Their parents' parents were not taught. So you just have an uneducated society when it comes to financial IQ. You have a society that knows a lot about the system of go to school, get an education, go to college, get a degree, go into the work field, get a job, and spend your life working that job. That's a very antiquated idea. I talked a lot about this in my podcast, Think Rich Radio. You or some of your listeners might want to go back and listen to some of those. But that whole idea is about a 200-year-old idea. It came up in the industrialization age when you were taking people from the agrarian status and they're getting them out of the fields and you bring them into the factories, and they needed to educate these people so they could actually work the factories. So the whole school system was born, and you had different levels of the education. And then after World War II is really when our current education system started to take shape. And what we started to see over the last 80 years is, people, it no longer became the exceptional, unique individual who went to college. It became everybody who went to college. And so now the college degree went from being something that was a super specialty that only a few people had to a commodity that everybody has. And now that everybody has it, it's not really that special anymore. And so we have this whole cockamamie education system that says you're going to go to school, you're going to get an undergraduate or a secondary education so that you can then go to get your college education. And then some people go on to get a graduate degree, a master's degree. Some people go on and get a PhD degree. And you have these levels of education so that they can go into a workforce. But what they failed to do in that educational process is teach people about some of the things that are the most important, which is financial IQ. And what they're not teaching that is today very, very relevant is the reality that because of the internet, because of all these things, that college education, it's not as valuable as it once was. Number one, everybody's got one. So since everybody has it, it in and of itself has become a commodity that doesn't have the same value as it once had. The second thing, let's take digital marketing, for example. The landscape of digital marketing is changing every 18 months. So an individual who goes into college, their freshman year of college, studying marketing and digital marketing, they want to come out and go out and do internet-based digital marketing. Well, by the time they complete a 4-year degree, their discipline has changed 3 times. The current higher education system cannot educate them in a way that you put them back in the workforce. So what we're seeing change, and what we're going to start to see really accelerate over the next probably 5 years, is that higher education degree is becoming worth less and less and less, because people are now starting to take classes like what I offer, and individuals like myself who are in the field. And we're putting together practical online classes that you can take for a fraction of the price. People can get a more practical education for maybe $1,000 instead of $100,000. They can immediately go to work and start using it. And what's happening is those people are then, those students are then discovering that that whole education system was not really built for them. So to answer your question, why aren't they teaching financial IQ? Because it wasn't built for that. It was built to teach people how to work in factories and be a profitable, productive member of society. But the monetary piece was being taught at home, if at all. And then you just ended up with an ignorant society. We just end up with a society that doesn't teach financial IQ.